Hi, everybody. It's Jay Dice, and I'm here in the booth with you again for another sneak peek video preview for this week's new release here on Say with Jay. For this week's new release, we are going back to Sweetwater, North Dakota for book number 8 in Jessie Gussman's Sweetview Ranch Western Christian Sweet Romance series, A Cowboy's Perfect Match. Now, I've got more about this fantastic story and a live preview reading for you in just a minute. But Jessie has included a dish in this story, and we thought it would be fun for me to make it for you here today, in another segment we like to call Cooking with Jay. Now, it's still cool weather in most places, downright cold in some, so in other words, perfect chicken soup weather. Well, this recipe is a very different version of chicken soup with a wonderful Asian flair to it. Today, we're going to be making Thai coconut milk chicken soup. If you've never had this, you owe it to yourself to try it at least once. If not this recipe, then the next time you're out and have an opportunity to try it, you have to. It's, besides just being absolutely delicious, it has just an aroma that is just unbelievable. And your house is going to smell absolutely fantastic cooking this. But without further ado, let's make us some. And as always, don't worry about trying to copy the ingredients and the directions down in real time. They'll be down in the description of this video below. All right, let's get started. So let's take a look at our ingredients. The first thing you're going to need is some boneless, skinless chicken breasts sliced thinly, and we're talking like 1/4 of an inch thick slices. I'm using a little over a pound. You're going to need a tablespoon or so of olive oil to brown your chicken in. You're going to need 1 container of chicken broth. You're going to need a teaspoon each of ginger, cilantro, lemongrass, and minced garlic. Now, you absolutely can buy the fresh versions of all of these things, and you can grind the ginger yourself, you can chop the cilantro, you can mince the garlic. That's fine, but I'm trying to make a midweek version of this, something that you can whip together easily any night of the week. So I'm going to use the prepared versions of these. You're also going to need 1 teaspoon of chili paste. You can find this usually in the international section of your grocery store. It's not very spicy at all. In fact, it's usually labeled as sweet chili paste. So it adds a lot of flavor, but does not add very much heat at all. You're going to need a 1/4 cup of lime juice. Absolutely feel free, like with the other ingredients, to use bottled lime juice. I just happened to have a couple of limes that I needed to use, so I'm going to squeeze mine fresh, but normally I would absolutely be using the bottled stuff. You're going to need 1 can of coconut milk, again, usually found right next door to the sweet chili paste. And finally, you want to use whatever vegetables you like. I'm going to use diced onion. I'm going to have some sugar pea pods, which I'd not tried before, but they turned out really good. And I also had some cherry tomatoes that I needed to use, so I'm going to throw a bunch of them in. To get started, the first thing you're going to want to do is heat up a Dutch oven or similar pot and add to that your tablespoon of olive oil once it's heated. Give it 10-15 seconds to get hot and add your chicken in. Now, this is important. You don't want to overly cook the chicken here. You really just want to cook it until the visible pink is gone. It's going to finish cooking in the soup. So if you overcook it here, it might get a little bit rubbery. After you have your chicken quick cooked, remove it from the heat. Add a little bit more oil if necessary, and add any vegetables that need a little softening. For instance, I'm going to add my onions and my peas, but not my soft veggies like the tomatoes in this case. Cook those for just a little bit until they're slightly softened, and then you're going to add your spices, your ginger, your cilantro, your lemongrass, your minced garlic, and your chili paste, and let it cook for an additional 1 minute. Next, add your broth and return your chicken to your pot, stir it, and then bring it up to just barely boiling. Add in your lime juice, then turn it down just a bit to a quick simmer, but below a boil. A very, very low boil, I guess might be a good way to describe it. You're going to allow it to gently cook just above a simmer for about 20 minutes, stirring it pretty frequently. Then you're going to turn your heat down to low, give it a minute to kind of calm down, add your coconut milk and any soft vegetables, like the tomatoes, and allow it to cook on low for 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, all that's left to do is serve it and enjoy. And ladies and gentlemen, that's really all there is to it. As you can see, it's got a good number of ingredients, but it is so simple to put together, and it is absolutely, I can't stress enough how absolutely wonderful it is. I hope you'll give it a try, and if you do, as always, please let us know how it goes down in the comments. All right, let's talk a little bit about a Cowboy's perfect match. The Cowboy's perfect match is about Stonewall and Joanna. As we've been reading about the Clyborn family, you've become familiar with Stonewall and Joanna. Joanna is the youngest Clyborn daughter, and Stonewall has been her friend since childhood. Such close friends that, in fact, once they were young adults and he was working with the farm and Joanna, he actually moved with the Clyborns to North Dakota from Wyoming. And that caused a bit of friction with his mother, who, while not a terrible mother, certainly not abusive or anything, was disinterested, let's say. And he found a lot of calm and family with the Clyborns. And more than that, he and Joanna have just been joined at the hip pretty much all their lives. They do everything on the farm together, working and playing, and they finish each other's sentences. They're just amazing best friends. But that's all they've been. When Stonewall's mother begins to push for him to come back home to visit, he resists to a degree because she also wants him to meet a young lady and get married. And she's really been turning the screws to get him to come home. Well, Stonewall basically refuses to go without his best friend, and when he and Joanna return, some changes happen between their relationship. Do they realize that the possibility of their friendship being broken up by one of them getting married triggers something greater? Well, you're going to have to come back this Friday to find out. But for now, here is the opening to A Cowboy's Perfect Match. I hope you enjoy it. Then come back this Friday for the full release here on Say with Jay. My mom called again. Joanna Clyborn paused as she fingered the wrench in her hand. She knew what her best friend, Stonewall, was trying to say, and she knew what she was going to do, but she didn't want to. Here's the half-inch wrench. She handed the wrench to Stonewall underneath the tractor. and adjusted her light so he could see as he lay on the ground and looked up, fixing whatever he'd figured out was wrong with it. She didn't really pay attention to those kinds of things. She was more the animal person, which was part of the reason she and Stonewall made such a great team. When it came time to work with animals, he became her helper, just like she was his helper now. "She's being pretty insistent. I don't want to go back to Wyoming, not for a day, let alone a month like she's asking, but she's really putting the pressure on." "Your mom knows how to put the pressure on," Joanna said with knowledge born of experience. Stonewall's mom had never really cared for Joanna, and sometimes Joanna wondered if she even cared for Stonewall. Stonewall always preferred the Clyborn house over his. It was a lot more peaceful, even though there were 14 people living in it before her parents died. "Thanks," he murmured as he took the wrench and fit it to a bolt with a couple of clanks. Joanna was grateful that it wasn't her lying on the ground. Even though it was unseasonably warm for North Dakota for the end of March, and the snow was all melted, the ground was still damp, and he had to be getting wet through his jeans and sweatshirt. Still, Stonewall didn't complain. He never complained. Whatever work there was to do, he did it, and they had fun while they worked together. She couldn't think of anyone else she'd rather work with. That included her siblings, as much as she loved them all. "Then I guess you're going to have to go," she said, saying the words lightly and simply. She didn't want him to go, didn't want him to leave the farm. She knew if he asked her, she'd be going with him, in a heartbeat. It wouldn't be a difficult decision, but she didn't like to leave the farm either. They'd struggled with a lot of different things since they'd moved to North Dakota, and this year the farm had finally broken into the black. She wasn't quite sure exactly how it happened. She suspected it had something to do with Tobias and some sort of windfall he had gotten, but she hadn't been privy to it and no one really said. Regardless, farming was fun if there wasn't the threat of not being able to pay the bills over one's head all the time. That was the problem, other than the never-ending work. The idea that full days of endless work didn't allow them to make enough to pay the bills. The clanging stopped, and Stonewall's head moved out from underneath the frame of the tractor so he lay on the ground looking up at her. His face was highlighted by the glare of her phone, and she was sure that the light reflected off hers as well, even though dark had long since descended on the prairie. "I'm not going without you." He said that firmly, and there was not an ounce of room in his statement for any kind of argument. She smiled. "I wondered." He snorted. "You did not. There was never a doubt in your mind that I was going to go without you." She grunted. He was right. There was just an unspoken agreement between the two of them. They didn't go anywhere without the other. Whatever Stonewall did, Joanna was right there, and whatever Joanna did, Stonewall was right there. Her family had long since accepted it, and so would she. There wasn't a person in the world whom she would rather be with, and even though she had a huge, close-knit family, Stonewall was the person she'd spent the most time with over the years. He knew her better than anyone and had been her best friend since she could remember. He leaned back, and she adjusted the light as he began to work on another bolt. She couldn't see his dark eyes, but she didn't have to be able to imagine the concentration on his face, how they would narrow and he would purse his lips as he focused on his task. His dark hair was close-cropped, but when he let it grow, it curled a bit at the end and looked cute curling out under a baseball cap. He currently wore a sweatshirt and jeans, which was his normal outfit on the farm, and that, along with his boots, clothes he wore naturally, looked casually handsome on him. She teased him over the years about how girls stopped and stared at him, but he never seemed to be interested in anyone. "So, are you coming?" he finally asked as he handed the wrench back. Need a 3/4. She dug in the box until she found one and handed it back as he murmured a thank you. "Of course. If you have to go, my family will just have to understand." She had a little bit of money saved up she could live on, and if they were going to be there a month, she might be able to find a few odds and ends jobs to earn a little something. She didn't have too many bills, since she and Stonewall lived on either side of a duplex that sat on the ranch property, although out of sight of the regular farmhouse. The family didn't charge them rent. It just came with the fact that they worked on the farm. "Do you think we could really leave for a whole month?" Stonewall asked, continuing to work, but his voice held the uncertainty she felt. "Both of us know this is a terrible time. It's the middle of calving season, and with Sandra and Claudia both due to have babies any time, they're going to be out of commission." "I know." Neither of them said anything for a while. Their silence was just as comfortable as the conversation. "I feel like it's selfish of me to even suggest that you should go." "You didn't suggest it, remember? If you're going, I am too." He chuckled. "Some people wait until they're invited." She smacked his calf that stuck out from underneath the tractor and was the only place she could reach. "Very funny. I don't recall inviting you to move with us from Wyoming to North Dakota." "You couldn't live without me, and you know it." "Maybe I couldn't wait to get rid of your sorry rear." He scoffed. "I'm pretty sure you didn't even give me a chance to decline. It was basically, 'Stonewall, we're moving to North Dakota. Get your bags packed.'" She laughed along with him, because they both knew that was pretty much true. While she would say they were both very considerate, they could also assume that if something needed to be done, the other was going to help. "You know, my family doesn't understand how we don't get tired of each other." "That's funny, because the last time I talked to my mom, she assumed that I had gotten tired of you too. I think she thought I would be moving back in a month." "It's been years. I bet she's disappointed." "That's why she's parading Whitney under my nose. She's determined that the two of us are destined to be together forever." Hi, this is Jay, and thanks for listening. If you're ready for another great Jessie Gussman audiobook, here's one we think you might like. Or check out our latest releases. Don't forget to subscribe to Say with Jay, give this video a thumbs up, and tell us what you liked in the comments.